isn't you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and we're going to get started when we hit 100 likes, but it's been a good week, I'd have to say, and it's important that we do a live stream because it's been a while since we've last done one, but regardless, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump trying to negotiate peace with Russia in Ukraine. Is Ukraine being difficult? We'll also talk about Trump's approval rating surging. We'll also be talking about some of the recent developments out of Doge. I think we'll lead off with that because it just, once again, they keep finding nonsense. They're barely on the job. They have been there for 3 weeks. It's going to be 4 weeks tomorrow. And we'll probably talk just a little bit about 2026 because we have some new polls this week that showcase the Republicans being in a decent position overall in some of these key races that you think traditionally wouldn't be that competitive and you wouldn't think Republicans would win it, but they're getting their act together, whereas the Democrats are completely collapsing, and we have a long way to go. We haven't even gotten to April. We have a very important election there taking place in Wisconsin as well as later this year in New Jersey and Virginia. More optimistic in New Jersey than Virginia, believe it or not, but that's the way it is. So, without further ado, the face cam is on, and once again, Doge is at it again. Elon Musk, not only is he finding out he has a kid this week, he's also finding out $1.9 billion in taxpayer funds were quote-unquote misplaced, very conveniently, by the Biden administration. So out of the gate, we're seeing this. They keep finding this nonsense. They found it in USAID. They're finding it in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is where this apparently is coming from. You have one basically week of the new HUD secretary. They're working with Doge already. You see all these people, they've got these code names. One of them's name is Big Balls. Elon's got these kids going out there basically coding into a lot of the government data. They're freaking out over the fact that, people have access to government data. Well, maybe because we want to see what the government's been doing about it. You see Elon Musk, he basically gets elected with Trump. Everybody knew that Trump was going to be putting Musk in some role to audit spending, and that's exactly what he's doing. And not only is Donald Trump doing what he promised to do, you're also seeing them find these things. They're finding problems. $1.9 billion. I mean, this adds up. 1.9 here, 1.9 here. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. A big portion of our budget is just waste. It's just money laundering to this the left-wing pork projects they have going on in Central America. That's where a lot of money goes. It goes directly into the hands of media companies. And this is a problem. And people are now realizing that it's a problem. And they elected Trump in part because Trump promised to do this with Elon. And the left is having a mental breakdown as this is happening in real time. And this ties into the other portion of the show here. Because it's not just like this is some very right-wing niche thing to do. Is to have this Doge because it's popular across the board. And the more the left attacks Donald Trump, the more popular he gets. And they're attacking common sense. And they think they're going to win elections in the process of attacking common sense. Well, they've lost 2, and arguably you could say 2.5. We'll say 2.5. We'll be generous here, just based on the fact that they're unwilling to realize that they're just out of touch with what the average American wants at this stage in the game. They want strong leadership like Trump. They don't want weak leadership. They want less wars abroad. That'll, kind of relate to what we'll be talking about with Russia and Ukraine. And they want us to be able to go in there and audit the government. And it's like, if you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't be throwing a temper tantrum about it. That's all this really stems from. They don't care about people's privacy. They never cared about people's privacy. What they care about is the fact that they're finding these things that make them look bad, make them look weak, make them look incompetent, and they're doing it under Donald Trump's administration as well. And that's another thing. They don't want to give him any victory. They never want to give him a win on anything. You're seeing that now with this whole Doge stuff. Elon Musk, they're saying, oh, Elon's the real president. It's like, well, he's doing a good job. I mean, if you look at any poll, the average American approves of it, but it's so clear that he's not. He's basically being contracted by the Trump administration to go in there and audit the government, audit spending, so then you could take it, you can make sure that we could get rid of the spending, lower our debt, lower the rate of debt, our debt to GDP ratio at least. We could try to balance the budget. These are things that the left would try to, drive the wedge between Trump and his base on, saying, oh, he hasn't drained the swamp. Oh, he's not doing that. Oh, he's not cutting spending. Oh, he's driving up the debt. They would do that to kind of wedge this divide, and they can't do that effectively anymore because now you have Donald Trump. What is he doing? He's contracting Elon Musk to go out there, drain the swamp. Not only that, he's actually doing it. You can actually just do things, believe it or not. He's finding a lot of these misappropriations, and it basically is fraud. People don't want to say that it's fraud. They want to say, oh, it's just spending on different projects. They want to say it's aid. It's mostly not all aid. A lot of it is just to nonsense that we saw, at least with the USAID type of stuff. And now you're seeing it in other departments. The Housing and Urban Development department, you're seeing it in education. Ever since you've had this bloated bureaucracy, you're kind of seeing the spending going out of control because the government is by and large used as a money laundering operation for a lot of these special interest and the donor class in this nation. And you're now seeing it being exposed, and the same people exposing it are having a mental breakdown about it, and they can't even hide it anymore. It doesn't even matter that it's polling underwater to oppose this sort of thing or that Trump is popular. This is the last gasp of just a dying regime, and there's going to be a long way to go before you get rid of it, but you're actually making progress. You could say it's the beginning of the end of these people, and already they're starting to throw a temper tantrum. And this is the time that you put your head down and you keep moving. You gotta keep winning. You don't want to cave into this nonsensical pressure because, oh, you're exposing basically something that should be criminal, if we're going to be completely honest. The taxpayer money, what it's going towards, how it's a mix of evil and just incompetent, stupid people that have been running the government for a very long time. And now we're finally seeing that, and a lot of people who weren't seeing that before, because a lot of us have known that for decades by now, now everybody else can see it, and it's not a good look for the regime that is losing power by the day within our government. And they understand that their days are numbered, and you're seeing that, and that's why they're having these mental breakdowns. But it's also, in part, leading Donald Trump to become more popular. It's leading Donald Trump to have a very high approval rating, and that he does. You have another poll out of RMG Research, which was not Trump's most I guess you would say favorable poll during election cycle. They weren't bad, but they weren't like phenomenally accurate. They still underestimated him. But if you look at the job approval rating in their most recent poll, Donald Trump, despite all the media coverage being more unhinged than ever, he's going out there, he's getting things done. The left is losing their minds over every little thing he does and every little thing Elon Musk does, and it doesn't matter. Donald Trump is over water, above water. He has a plus 12% approval rating. His personal favorabilities are in the positives, according to RMG Research, 3,000 registered voters in this poll that was conducted and released on Friday, and a jump of 6 points in the past week while this stuff has been going on. So do I think it's all related? Do I think Trump actually had like a 6% bump on net? Probably not. You know, it is true that Donald Trump probably was above water. Maybe he was above water by more than 6, and maybe he's still below 12. It's a little bit of an outlier, but he's still above water is the main point. He's not losing ground. If anything, he's gaining ground. 55% of the nation on his side. If that stays remotely true, which I'm not saying it's going to, but if that continues on the trajectory that it's currently on, are you seriously going to tell me that Republicans are going to be screwed in the next midterm election cycle? Because the answer is they're probably not going to be. If Donald Trump is relatively popular, maybe he's like at 50-50, you could still lose the House, you name it. Maybe you want to argue he's not over water by 12 points. Maybe you want to argue that, but still, this is not the only poll that we've seen that is showing this. And Donald Trump, as a president, almost a month into his term, still has a positive approval rating. And the left doesn't really know how to handle it. What are they going to whine about? Inflation? You want to whine about inflation? Donald Trump hasn't even been president for a month. Inflation's been out of control for the past 4 years, just about. Therefore, you don't really have that right. 2 years down the line, if it's getting worse, then maybe you could start to talk about the fact that he's sharing the blame with Biden because he's not doing enough. Maybe they'll make that claim at the time, but you don't get to make the claim now. And if you make the claim now and you are them, well, as time goes on, you're just going to be making a bigger fool out of yourself. So, be my guest. Go do it. Whine about eggs being high in price that were still on the shelves during the Biden administration, or just about, because they were doing that a week into Trump's tenure. You don't get to have the moral high ground when Donald Trump doesn't do anything to raise prices. You can't even use the tariffs excuse, which would be minuscule in comparison to what we've seen. Even according to the anti-tariff studies, it was like, whoa, $15 a week per family. It's like, yeah, I think that's worth American dignity. It's worth the long-term gains. We saw the same fear-mongering during Trump's first term. Doesn't add up, but it's not about the tariffs. It's just about the fact that these people are going out there, they're whining every little thing he does. They're trying to blame everything on Trump. It's like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. And even if you're on Trump's side, you can argue, the deportation numbers aren't where they need to be. Well, we need to pass more funding so ICE can have the resources to go out there and arrest illegal aliens. And you also have some bad faith subversive actors from the Biden administration still left over that are trying to tip people off about where these deportation sites are going to be. Therefore, it makes the job of ICE a lot harder to do. It's ridiculous. But I mean, it just, if anything, confirms that Trump was the right choice in that department. Even if you look at the border crossings, because we need more deportations, everybody can agree. Trump can agree. Everybody in Trump's administration agrees. We'll get there, hopefully. But, if you look at the border crossings in terms of the just main crisis, they're down 90% plus since Trump took over initially. Now, I don't know how long that's going to continue. Hopefully it keeps on being that way, because just the mere presence of actual leadership causes a lot of people just to decide, if Trump's going to deport me and he's deporting people, why am I going to enter the U.S. illegally knowing I'd be deported? That's kind of what it comes down to. You don't even have to deport all 11 million, or it's a lot more than that now, probably like 21, even on the low end, we'll even just say 20 plus million illegals that exist in this country, if not more than that. It's like you could deport maybe 6 million. I mean, the rest are just going to go home. You could probably not all of them, but you will have a lot of them. You will start to get to a point where if you're deporting, millions, probably above 5, somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, maybe a little bit more than that if you have the resources, a lot of the rest are just going to go home on their own because they know they're going to be next. They'll just go voluntarily, you name it. We can get there. It is true, self-deportation is a thing. It can help speed the process. We still need to get our numbers up there, because once they hit the sweet spot, yeah, you're going to see a lot of people just decide to go home. You'll see far less people entering the country, knowing that it's going to be a dead end for them. If they're caught, they're going to have to go back, that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll get there eventually. We'll see. But regardless, Trump is doing a good job so far, and the people that oppose him even understand it if they're going to be honest with themselves. That's the main takeaway. And he's honestly getting close if we're talking about stopping the wars abroad. You know, you have Russia, Ukraine. It's been going on for over 3 years now, just about. And Donald Trump said on the campaign trail, we're going to get it done really quickly. He's wanting to get it done. He's met with Zelensky. He's met with Putin. He's met with both of them. He wants to strike a deal. And you have so many people that are just on the Ukraine side that are just delusional about this, because I feel like they understand that Trump is close. They're close to making a deal, but at the same time, they don't really want to give Trump a win. And you're kind of seeing Zelensky go out there and act like the diva that he is, saying, oh, we're not going to accept any deal that the U.S. and Russia agrees to. It's like, well, then you're not going to accept a deal with Russia, then you're not going to end the war. And at that point, you should not be getting any foreign aid, not a single cent of foreign aid from the government whatsoever. You shouldn't have been getting it to begin with. But especially now, consider what we've given them a sunk cost already out of the gate. If you're going to go out there and say, oh no, we're not going to agree to a deal unless we're in NATO and Putin's in prison, that's not realistic. You know, you have to be a realist about this. They were mad at Pete Hegseth because Pete Hegseth said, yeah, you know, it's very unlikely that Ukraine's going to have its 2014 borders back after we, you know, get this war over with and negotiate peace or whatever. And it's true. You're not going to likely get all of Crimea back. You're not going to get the Donbas back, most likely, at least not all of it. But first of all, a lot of those provinces, they're filled. Not every single one where you have Russian troops in, but several of them are majority Russian. They speak Russian. They want to be a part of Russia. According to several referendums, they'll claim those are rigged. But no, our elections are fine, by the way. But no, those they'll just automatically dismiss out of the gate. And I'm not saying that they aren't influenced by certain propaganda or whatever, but that largely goes on both sides. It would make sense why the Russians would want to be a part of Russia. The ethnic Ukrainians want to be a part of Ukraine, if you even want to call them ethnic Ukrainians, but the people that identify more with Ukraine want to be a part of Ukraine. And if you're going to negotiate an end to the war, why not say we could have people stop dying? We could increase sanctions if Russia does anything further, but make sure people stop dying. You know, your borders are here. You have this part of this region and this part of this region. That's basically what it would come down to. It would make more sense that way, so you could stop people from dying and also, I guess, increase the alert of if Russia does anything again, well, this is what's going to happen. But you got to stop provoking Russia at the rate they've been provoking Russia. It's clear that, they would rather continue to just kill off their entire population in war if it meant they had like a 1% chance at beating the evil Russian guy, Putin, which I'm not saying that he's, not to a certain degree a shady guy, corrupt guy. They all are. They really all are. You think Zelensky's perfect? No. Clearly not. Everybody understands that. He's corrupt. He's a thug. Putin's corrupt. Putin's a thug. They're all thugs. The bottom line is that we need to make sure that we can do what's best in our interest, so we don't have to, answer to this nonsense of we have to spend X amount of $1 billion every single year defending other countries' borders while we're not defending our own. That's kind of a problem that we have. So we need to make sure we can use our strong leadership that we have in Trump to settle the war. Now, I will say, if you just cut off their revenue stream, cut off their income, they're going to have to come to the table. They're going to have to get this deal done sooner than later, because it just makes sense. You're losing a war. You're losing certain regions that don't even want to be a part of your country in the first place. That's all it comes down to. If that's part of the deal, that's part of the deal. We want people to stop dying. It's not going to necessarily be this whole ordeal where, and Putin's going to invade Poland tomorrow if you decide to strike a deal to end the war. That's not really how it works. Trump is not pro-Putin. He's not necessarily pro NPC globalist takes about Ukraine either. That's why they don't like him. But the main philosophy, the main end game from it is much stronger as a result. And that may include, oh yeah, he's going to have to pull the plug completely on Ukraine funding, cut down a lot of it, a lot of the foreign aid in the State Department, which is good. There's a lot more to do. And I think that leveraging that against Ukraine, saying, okay, well, maybe we'll meet you halfway here if you allow us to get that money back through your resources, because they floated that idea, then they reneged on that idea. It's a big mess. Everything going on there is just a big mess. But the one thing that's true is that Donald Trump is wanting to get this war finished. Putin claims he does. Zelensky is just apparently dead set on continuing the war for one reason or another, putting more of his people at risk, more of his land at risk, putting more of our money, our taxpayer dollars, going overseas to Ukraine to fight this effort. That's not really a winning effort. It's not really looking all that good on that side of things, but Donald Trump is going to have to use leverage where necessary, get Zelensky to come to the table, get Putin to come to the table, strike out some deal, end the war. The left is not going to be happy about that. They're going to claim that he's siding with Putin because he's getting people to stop dying, essentially, in this conflict. That would mean that Russia's not going to take over Europe if you strike a deal, keep them at bay. But that's what these people on the left claim. It's not something that is even feasible, not even something that's realistic. That's not to defend Russia, not going to defend Putin, all the shady things that he's done. Just like I'm not going to defend the other side. I want peace in the region. I want peace in Eastern Europe, peace in the Middle East, ideally. I don't want our taxpayer dollars going over in each conflict. I don't want us wasting so much time dealing with it. That's why I think if you have strong diplomacy that can go over there, negotiate deals, get things done, that's great. And it really should just belong in terms of our foreign policy in this hemisphere. And if we're able to do that, which Trump already has to a large extent with some of his actions and a lot of what he's talked about and his focus, but hopefully we can continue to see progress on this front. Because if he does that, and if he negotiates an end to the war in Russia and Ukraine and continues to make some sort of progress, de-escalating whatever's going on in Gaza, the Middle East, the Israel-Palestine conflict, if he could simmer down both of those conflicts substantially during the next 2 years, and you could see, maybe the inflation rates fall from 3% per month, and it goes down to 1 to 2 again, and wages start rising again, and you actually get to see deportation numbers. His popularity is only going to go up. You're not going to be talking about a honeymoon period. You're going to be talking about something where he'll have support of the country outside of the TDS sufferers, and that's a lot of momentum heading into 2026. Where Democrats have an awful Senate map. They're trailing in the polls in Georgia. They're trailing in the polls in Michigan. They don't even know if they're going to have their incumbents running in places like Virginia, New Hampshire. They're second guessing. They're already down in Michigan, their candidate. They're down in Minnesota, their candidate. You're talking about Republicans going out there and being on the verge of gaining net Senate seats. Doesn't even seem like Roy Cooper. We'll see what happens in North Carolina. Is he going to go for it? Because if he does, or even if he does, he doesn't necessarily win. He might be a strong candidate for the Democrats there. But if he doesn't go for it, Democrats basically are admitting, yeah, North Carolina's out the window. Maine, they basically have admitted, is out the window. Michigan, they want to put up the worst candidate possible. Minnesota could be such a shit show that the Republicans might have an outside chance. Keyword is outside, but chance is also there. And then Georgia, it's not looking good. Like, what exactly is their end game here as a party? They've just become extremely incompetent. They're starting to mirror what we're seeing in the Florida Democrats. These parties, these state parties that are incompetent, Florida, Texas, even Arizona on the Democrat side. You're starting to see that in the National Party and some of these other state parties as well, like Michigan. Michigan's been a strong Democrat party. You really couldn't recruit Duggan to run as a Democrat despite him basically literally being a Democrat. Technically you could say mayor, there's not technically a partisan, but it's been clear he's been a Democrat, mainly like a centrist 90s Democrat. has done a relatively decent job for a mayor of Detroit. You couldn't get him to run. He'd be a slam dunk. I mean, he'd get a lot of crossover votes, one could argue. He still likely will running third party. He's going to make it a three-way race possibly. But you're seeing what's going on. They're losing their competence across the board, losing it in Michigan, losing it in Minnesota. Also, Gary Peters is not even running for re-election. Whitmer's not going for the Senate seat. She's going for the White House and probably is not going to get through the primary come 2028. But it's like you look at the map, you look at Trump's approval. It's very early. You look at what you're seeing. You're also looking at possible redistricting in Ohio. Could gain a couple House seats. Texas gain a couple House seats. And some of these states pad that majority because you're already near your ceiling. It's like if Republicans manage to hold on to their trifecta and possibly expand it in certain places and pick off state houses, I mean, asterisk midterm is not out of the question. It's a little bit early to talk about. I get it. I'm not going to sit here a year from now if things aren't looking good and say, well, it turns out it's going to be an asterisk. We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Democrats are not taking the Senate. There's no path. Not winning Alaska and Iowa. They need to win like a combination of states on that tier to win the Senate. And they have to win everything else when it's stacked against them. Republican incumbents in Maine and North Carolina. You got a really strong Republican candidate running in Georgia against a very overrated and weak incumbent. Probably flips that without a runoff. So out of the gate, you're talking about 52 Senate seats, somewhere in that ballpark. Even in a bad year for Republicans, are going to end up with at least 51, probably 52. And at that point, Democrats, they have to like run the table every election cycle in the Senate just to have a chance at holding the Senate. It's very unlikely. The Senate in the 2030s is not going to be good for Democrats. It's not going to be good for them at the presidential election level. The House is their only hope. And even then, it's like red states are finally learning how to play the game. States like Illinois, New York, Connecticut have been playing for decades. You know, they gerrymander the most. They point fingers because they have bad geography. And if a red state does anything about a tenth as egregious as they're doing in California, a lot of these places, even though Trump is in the White House, the bad, evil orange man, as they viewed him in the first term, they claimed, oh, no, we're the majority now. The majority opposes the evil orange man. They viewed him as illegitimate. Oh, it was Russia. Oh, the Electoral College. They don't have those excuses anymore. The left is exhausted. You know, they're still the high propensity party, which we'll see what happens in Wisconsin. They're losing the only poll in the Supreme Court race so far. But, I mean, either way, they're in a lot of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. I'm not just saying that because I want them to be in trouble. They're actually in a fair amount of trouble if things don't rapidly change for them. And by rapidly change, I mean they need to find that issue like they did with healthcare to wedge. But Trump and his operation, very, very tight-knit operation this time around. Susie Wiles has done a phenomenal job leading the personnel with the chief of staff role that she has, and she really runs a tight ship and understands what the agenda is, what needs to be done, you know, how to win. And if Trump can continue to go down the pathway he's going down, and the public is more in line with supporting him than they ever were at any point during his first term, there's no reason for me to believe that he can't continue that into 2026. And if he has a good approval and he's actually delivering results, he passes the updated tax bill, renews the cuts, no tax on tips, gets deportations done. Yeah, I mean, Republicans, why wouldn't they be rewarded? But the other thing is, it's not just a Trump or Republican thing. A lot of Republicans still are dealing with the fact that the brand of the party is not in line with Trump, so they have to deliver for him, unlike what they did in 2017, and actually give people a reason to turn out, give Trump's base a reason to turn out to expand the majority that he has. Because it's true, Trump supporter and Republican are two different things. The Republican party's come around a great deal, but there still is a long way to go. So we'll be talking about that as well, but we do have to get to these super chats because we have a lot of them already. The goal is 30. 30 super chats. We're already at 14. We're halfway through, so feel free to send them in if you guys want them read during the stream. But we got a lot to get to after a quick water break. Johnny Heartdog for 10 says it's been reported that Ukraine isn't going to honor any negotiations. The EU is backing Ukraine. No more funding for Ukraine. Defund and leave NATO and let Russia kick Ukraine, leave us out of this. Well, that's definitely something that I feel like you're probably not going to see Trump leave NATO. But in terms of stopping the funding until Ukraine also comes to the table, then yeah, that's something that Trump, I think, would do, and it would work. I don't think you'd have to leave NATO. I'm not saying that you shouldn't threaten to leave NATO, get the most you should out of NATO. I just don't think it's a realistic prospect that Trump's just going to say, okay, we're going to leave NATO year one of his term, unless we see how these things continue to go. But also, Johnny for 10 says, if there was an amendment that would allow Elon to run for president, do you think he'd win? What about VP? I don't know if he has like the personality to run and win. I really don't. Plus, he's barely been like a Republican. Like, how would that even play out? How would he get through? I mean, he might have earned support in the base to get through a primary, but it's like, do people view Elon the same way they view Trump? Maybe not. I see him as like an accessory of Trump, somebody who can help enact his agenda, help make the government more efficient. Like, that's kind of his role. I don't think he'd ever really run for president. I don't think you're ever going to see the Constitution be amended. But I don't know. Maybe one day the amendment could happen, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. Also, Johnny for 5 says, if Trump got us out of NATO and the UN, I bet his approval rating would climb even higher. Well, I don't know. I don't know how that would be viewed. I don't know if the public is quite ready for some of those more drastic foreign policy measures, but people that act like it would be the end of the world would have egg on their face. I would say that much, because those people always are the people that have egg on their face about everything. So Johnny Heartdog for 5 says, has Elon derangement syndrome replaced TDS? I'm seeing more EDS than TDS. Well, it's because they view him as an accessory to his administration that is effectively going out there and just auditing the government and uncovering all of this nonsense that we've been spending money on over the past who knows how many years. So, of course, the left's going to hate Elon. Do they hate him more than Trump? Well, they liked him when he was on their side, but now times have definitely changed quite a bit. So, let's see. Jacob Hawley for 20 says, the Democrat Party is absolutely cooked. I left after what they did to Bernie and voted Trump in 24. Identity politics has turned us off in suburban Wisconsin. J.D. Vance is promising with his economic populism. Hawley for VP? Well, I think Hawley is probably going to be... no, he won't be running for... He already ran for re-election in the presidential year, so he'd be up in 2030. I don't know. It's possible. It's possible that Vance would pick him. I think Vance, he's very similar to Vance, not really on the radar. I don't know what Vance would choose as VP. We'll probably be talking about that when we get closer to 2028. Johnny Heartdog for 10 says, can the judges that are blocking Trump and Musk be impeached? Also, if we lose the House but keep the Senate, all bets are off as Trump's agenda is concerned. Well, he'll still be able to enact policy, but he would have to work in terms of the budget with the Democrats and in Congress. There'd just be a big mess overall. You'd probably have a government shutdown or two. Trump's approval rating would probably decline at that point. So would Congress's approval rating, maybe not by much, but I mean, we saw it in the first term. So it's just the same concept. You'll still be able to get things done in the Senate, confirm judges, do all that. But in terms of the codification of Trump's agenda, you need Congress. You absolutely do. And I feel like that might drive a lot of people out to the polls in 2026 on the Trump side if they're aware of what's at stake. Johnny Heartdog for 5 says also there probably won't be a red wave in 26, but what about at least a red tide? Is that possible? Well, yeah, it's possible. I don't think a blue wave is possible. And that's the thing, because in the House, you're already guaranteed, like seats that are R plus 10 or more, you're basically guaranteed over 200 seats in the House. And you have a lot of incumbents, which are just harder to beat naturally. So out of the gate, I think you basically get 210. For the Republicans, probably a similar number on the Democrat side. The rest of the seats are going to be up for grabs. Now, Democrats might take the House back, but you're not going to have a wave. In the Senate, I mean, the best they can do is a net gain of, 1 or 2 seats, and it's unlikely that they're going to do that based on the map, based on who's running which candidates, etc. So maybe they can get to 52. That might be possible, but I don't think it's likely because I think Georgia flips. North Carolina could flip blue, and I think Maine holds. Now, Michigan with Buttigieg, I think Republicans, you could make a case they're favored. New Hampshire, I think Shaheen would have to retire for that to actually be a competitive race. But Scott Brown can make things close. He could make things closer. So I'm not looking at this in a wave. I'm looking at who can win these chambers, or who could have the net gains in the House, the net gains in the Senate. That's who's going to win the midterms. And in the Senate, it's not looking like it's going to be the Democrats. And even if they do everything right, they're still not retaking the Senate. The Republicans, in terms of the House, a little bit of an uphill climb, but not as much as a lot of people would think because of how many seats out of the gate they're going to start off with. Money's going to matter. You're going to have a lot of very few, very competitive, contentious House races that'll be taking place. But because of polarization we see within redistricting, we don't see as much just chaos where you see, 55 flips. You were kind of too polarized for that. It seems like as things currently stand, on a good year for Republicans, you have a more effective governing majority because of polarization as well. So let's see. Ronald Garcia says, I could see Republicans getting 55 Senate seats by flipping Georgia and Michigan. 50 Scott Brown runs in New Hampshire, which I think he will. Maybe 57 if Warner retires. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not likely you're going to get up there, but is it possible? Are Republicans more likely to walk away with an impressive midterm than the Democrats? Absolutely. Because what are Democrats going to do? Maybe, you flip 7 House seats and you flip 1 Senate seat. Congratulations. Wow. You really moved a needle there. You really changed the world. No, you didn't. You really didn't. So either way, I think the winner of the midterm is probably going to come down to who actually comes out of it unscathed. If Democrats have a narrow House majority and they manage to have 48 Senate seats instead of 47, they could say, it's a relative victory for them. But in reality, it's a piss-poor midterm performance. But their ceiling is kind of low, even if Trump is not popular, just because of how things stand. You're not going to see a 2018 repeat because you don't have the math for that. You don't have it. Trevor Hint says, is Trump a top 10 president? Well, if you can name 10 better, then no. Recency bias is going to play a role, but I think that we'll be able to fully judge that by the end of Trump's term, not judge it now. But I think that his political arc is unlike anything we've ever seen. In terms of an iconic leader, definitely he's in the top. I think you'd have to say top 5. I mean, how many presidents have just had the story arc that he's had up to this point? Now, there's a lot of work to be done, but it's like if he's able to fulfill his agenda, continue to get things done, stay popular, and even become more popular as he's become, it's like, I think top 10 is very, very doable. I don't think it's, even when you factor in recency bias, it's possible. Greenland's on the table, the Panama Canal. It's true, every consequential president typically expands the map in some way, shape, or form. So that definitely, when people think of, how did we get Greenland? And it's Trump and he gets it done. It's like, well, there you go. 30, 40 years from now, people still will be talking about him. Johnny Hart Dog for 5 says Trump has a lot of hate in Anchorage, but I'm guessing it's only here in the city, mostly within the school. Well, school districts in general are going to be left-leaning, in terms of the people. If you work in a school district, you're going to surround yourself with a lot of, government union type of people. And education has always been something that's leaned left, at least since like the 1950s, 60s. It's partially why you see this gap in education in general, and the way things move. But Anchorage itself is a red area. Fairbanks is red. It's like the rural parts of Alaska are the bluer ones, but then Anchorage is getting a little bit bluer, and then the native reservations and the rurals are actually getting redder. So it's kind of like a trade-off. But Alaska's gotten a little bit bluer than it was 20 years ago, but it's not like it's at risk of flipping anytime soon, like so many delusional people on the left would have you believe. But Ice Cream Junkie for 10 says, I had very little respect for Mitch McConnell to begin with, but I've lost all of it watching him vote against all these cabinet picks the past few weeks. Absolute disgrace. Yeah, he's showing his true colors, just like John McCain on the way out. It's like, okay, well, Mitch, it's time to go. He's been there for how long? Next year, he's not going to run for re-election, I believe. He'll be gone for good. He'll be replaced, hopefully, with somebody who's not an acolyte of his own, and that would cause a massive morale boost for Senate Republicans because he's such a stain on the brand, and so many people just ignore that fact, but it's true. John Waffle H2P says Ukraine is an illegal country. Well, they didn't exist until post-Cold War. So Red Whale Politics says nobody's going to buy the Dems' opinion on the economy if it recovers a little bit before the midterms. Hopefully somewhat pre-COVID economy. Well, hopefully you deport enough people, you have help wanted signs in enough places. That would definitely be a nice start. Ice Cream Junkie for 10 says Putin is evil and should have never invaded, but Zelensky's no hero. He has no problem with his own citizens continuing to get killed. We should stop all aid until he agrees to negotiate a peace deal. Yeah, of course, because he's putting his own people at risk too. If you actually care about people and people dying and humanity, it's like, oh, well, we didn't have these 3 kilometers of land in this region full of a bunch of ethnic Russians that it's like the worst thing ever and Trump is Putin's puppet. It's like, no, just settle the war, end it, get it over with, and move on. It's true. Red Whale Politics is the liberal mainstream media is a complete joke and collapsing, but independent liberal media is somewhat collapsing as well. People are waking up. That part is true. XJ Cherokee Bear says, do you think Harry Sisson will be scared straight? You have to be very scared to be straight at that point, given who he is. Roku Fan 1835 says, do you know when egg prices go down? Screw Biden. I don't know. I know it's mainly bird flu more so than just Biden. Obviously, Biden inflation was out of control, but the fact you see it going up right now, a lot of it's like bird flu related. It's not something Trump's done. It's not even directly Biden related, but it was happening under Biden. But it only became a problem to people on the left until Trump took power. It's like they said, oh, he was elected because of eggs. It's like, I never was talking about eggs. We talked about inflation. It's part of it. But it wasn't just eggs. It was about immigration. It was about the state of who's actually going to run our country for the next 4 years. Is it going to be the same regime, the same deep state? Or is it going to be somebody who's willing to wrestle with that and possibly root it out and drain the swamp? And that's what Elon's doing. It's what Trump is doing. It's why they're angry. It's why they're very angry. Michael in NC1 says, will Tulsi be the first woman president of the United States? Tulsi 2036? I don't know. She definitely has potential in terms of putting her hat in the ring, and she would do it as a Republican. And she was a Democrat when she was doing it back in 2020. So it's possible. I don't think it's completely impossible. Maybe she'd be on the short list for like Vance's VP. We'll see how she does as the DNI spot that she's in. See what she can uncover. If she does a good job and can stand out, then she's definitely going to be listed a lot more as a contender, not just 2028, but in terms of the VP. Because I think Vance has pretty much got it locked up unless something like drastic happens. Red Whale Politics is hopefully we could primary around 2 to 3 rhinos in deep red states heading into the midterm. The rest of the establishment will fall in line. Yeah, exactly. Because these people at the end of the day, They want to have power. Many of them are rhinos beholden to donors that have gotten them elected time and time again. But if some of these rhinos start losing their primaries, the other ones are going to have to listen to the constituents instead of the donor class. And hopefully more and more people will begin to fall in line. So I agree 100% with that. American Nerd 1776 says, from Charlie Kirk, Senator Tom Cotton is reportedly working behind the scenes to stop Trump's pick Elbridge Colby from getting confirmed at the DOD. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know who that is. But Tom Cotton, yeah, I mean, he's somebody who domestically is decent, but his foreign policy is just in line with the worst neocons possible. So it wouldn't surprise me that he's sticking his head out to stop a confirmation pick. Ash K2 says, while Kemp is popular, recall that in early 2018, Phil Bredesen was leading, or recently Hogan in Maryland. Popular governors don't necessarily guarantee. Well, you're right. They don't necessarily guarantee a win. I think Kemp would win. I think just because of Georgia, its lower propensity electorate is still more Republican usually, aside from some of these like runoff elections where the Abrams machine has gone to work, which they're not a thing anymore. So, yeah, I mean, it's true that if you're an incumbent governor, like if Chris Sununu went for Senate, it's no guarantee he would win. But Georgia's already a state that's pretty much right-leaning, maybe not as much as it was, but a swing state, and that in a midterm electorate, Brian Kemp likely would defeat John Ossoff. And I'm not a fan of Brian Kemp, but I'm just saying Ossoff, it took a lot of luck for him to win. He's not necessarily popular. He's not really all that moderate. Kemp is somebody that I think could go out there and win without even a runoff, just because he is a very popular governor. And the incumbent governor, Bredesen was not an incumbent governor when he ran for Senate, and Tennessee was like a R plus 20 to 30 state. So if he outperformed by like 10 to 15, if you want to apply the same logic, that would be more than enough for Kemp. I don't even think Kemp's going to win by 7 like the one poll showed him winning by, but I think he would win by like 3 or 4. Yeah, it's entirely possible because Ossoff is just not that solid. And yeah, Hogan in Maryland, the overperformance in those states is insane. Anyways, if you want to take it at face value. So it's like Hogan overperforms by like 20 or 15 to 20. So does Bredesen. I don't see that comparison as like a bad thing if you're talking about Kemp. I don't think Kemp is going to win by 15. I think he'd win by less than 5, but I think he would be favored to begin with. Now, if things change, if Trump becomes unpopular for some reason, which there's no signs of that happening, but, would change the prediction. Alex Sirico says, Heidi Heitkamp just announced a run for her old Senate seat in 2028. Can she win? I'm terrified. Absolutely not. I mean, no, that's insane. I don't even know if you're telling the truth when you say she's running for it. But no, Heitkamp at the time was an incumbent with the whole blue wave. She lost by like 15. It was one of the biggest losses to Kramer in North Dakota, and that was an easy flip. And she was the incumbent. If you're talking about a presidential year where North Dakota's going to vote red by like 40 points, she'd be lucky to get it under probably 25. That would be abysmal. For her sake, if she went for that, I don't think she's going to go for it. Mincel Speed Run for 10 says it's 25 and some zeros on X will still warn about long COVID. I'm sorry, but it's a dead horse if you're harping about a 5-year-old cold. If it's over, you deserve 4 more of Joe and Kamala. Well, I haven't seen that, but it doesn't surprise me of people that will, on the left, you'll still see people wear masks. It's not as common as it was like in 2022, but it's still a thing. Some people just have not recovered mentally. That's why they think they've had COVID for 5 years. So, but it's not a pressing issue. Eris Walker for 2 says, will the Democrat-Republican primaries both be well, on the Democrat side, it will. I mean, if the Republicans, you want to have another clown car of people that will run against Vance, you want DeSantis to run again, you want Nikki Haley to run again, be my guest. You're not going to beat Vance in a Republican primary so long as Trump is popular, so long as Vance is in Trump's good graces and in the good graces of the voter base as a whole. I don't see him losing the primary. I think it'd be ridiculous to assume that he'd probably have just about an easy time winning that primary as Trump had winning the 2024 primary. Maybe he'd lose a state to like a Haley type like Vermont or something, but he'd come out victorious in the end. Red Whale Politics for 10 says, what is also helping Republicans is for the last few years, they've been slowly but surely becoming less establishment and more becoming of a populist party, thanks to Trump, unlike the Democrats, which again is true. Democrats have decided to just nut hug the entire establishment because they represent the full establishment. Republicans used to. And it's taken some losses, trimming the fat, etc., in the party to allow change to take place. And so it has, and there's a lot of work to do. We're not quite there yet, but the entire vibe has shifted. It's no longer with these neocons. It's on the Republican side of the actual American voter, the Trump base, that sort of thing. Peter Keoth for 10 says, in Democrat forums, I see this total delusion that tariffs will spike inflation, wreck the economy, and cause a massive blue wave. Low propensity voters still a challenge, but a 2002 midterm is... Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the best way to look at it. It's not impossible, but it's going to take a lot to change. And I think in the states where you have party registration, like Arizona, Nevada, you're going to see a little bit of a red year because it's easier to find and target these voters in some of these places more so than other places. Wisconsin, it's harder. Michigan, it's harder. Pennsylvania could be a little bit easier, but are you really going to beat Shapiro? Well, you want to run somebody strong enough to compete so you can have some possible down ballot coattails in the House where you don't lose some of these seats. So I don't know who's going to go for it, but they'll probably lose, but it will be hopefully respectable enough. John Waffle says, could we possibly flip Warner's seat in Virginia if Youngkin's... Well, if Warner retires, then I think it's possible. Otherwise, I don't think Youngkin's going to go for it. Michael in North Carolina says, I say rep for president 2036. Do I have a second? Well, we'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen, but maybe one day. You never know. Ash K2 for 5 says, I remember in 2023 there was an article or study that showed that more of Gen Z identified as LGBT 30% than Republicans 25%. Liberals used it as evidence for a blue wave. Well, it's clear that if you look at the exit polling, Trump got around 40-some% of young voters. He only got like the low 30s back in 2016 when he won. So you're seeing the shifts in the younger generation. And a lot of that shift, the alphabet stuff, it's women that identify as bisexual more so than, it's like a lot of like young men are turning gay. Like some of that's there. Some of it is, but a lot of that massive shift is that a good chunk of women just identify as bisexual for one reason or another. Also, Johnny Hartdog for 5 says, if Musk, the Senate, and RNC funds heavily the right House races, can we keep the House? Yes, I'm focused heavily on the House. Well, you're right to be heavily focused on it. And yeah, we'll be doing a House prediction probably this upcoming week. I want to do 2026. I want to do all three updated predictions because it's been a while. But I'm not sure if we're going to have Republicans winning the House, but I am sure that it's going to be very close. And we don't know what the map's going to look like, but it's even possible that if, California, you have a strong performance at the gubernatorial level, that, yeah, you might see some coattails down ballot positively impact some of these House races and go on a revenge tour. If Democrats lose a couple of those House seats that they flipped, that a lot of people didn't expect them to in California, and you're losing it in Ohio and Texas because of the mid-decade redistricting, how are you going to take the House back at all when you're already going to be in a deficit of like 8 or 9 more seats than you're already in? Like, where's the math? You're not going to have enough math to get there because at that point you're going to need a net like gain of 11. I don't see that happening, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. Real Texan Politics with a member chats his average 2026 Democrat candidate be like, I'm from the IRS and got fired under the fascist Trump-Musk administration. Vote for me. Yeah, they think that people are going to hate Elon Musk. It's like you would understand 2018. They were effective. People didn't like Paul Ryan and what a lot of House Republicans were doing. Even portions of Trump's voter base didn't like what they were doing. And it would make sense to capitalize on that by running on, healthcare. We'll be okay with certain Trump economic measures, but healthcare, this is a big issue. Running on the whole gun thing that definitely backfired in some places, but the main takeaway was they did well enough to win. They were competent. They had a good year. They don't really seem to be doing that this cycle. What are they going to run on? Doge is bad. It's like, how dare you want to audit the government? How are you going to explain to somebody how Doge is bad other than saying Doge bad? It doesn't make sense. It's not like you have Elon using the government to do something that's unpopular or nefarious. Who knows? He's just auditing the government and then having a bunch of kids with a bunch of influencers, allegedly. But that's a whole nother topic. But Elon is just, he's got a 13th son, apparently, or a 13th child. We found that out. We found it out through Twitter or X. I think he probably found out through X. But I don't know. Lazy A92 says, assuming JD's the next nominee, is there a decent chance he picks a female VP? I figure he brings the Rust Belt. She could help with the suburban moms. Well, I don't even know if the woman VP thing helps or hurts. Find somebody who's competent. Find somebody who can appeal to swing voters and eloquently talk your message. Look, Vance was that pick for Trump. A lot of people doubted it, but it turned out to be successful. And Vance was the only one at the end of the election cycle that had a positive net favorable rating in the exit polls, which is shocking to a lot of people given the bad press and coverage. But I always knew that when he would be out there, it'd be an acquired taste. And I think a lot of people acquired that taste by the time that he wiped the floor with Tampon Tim. And the media, by the way. The media tours were great, and he still does them. So John Campbell says, I'm an ASU student, and Doug Ducey knows my professor. He came and spoke to us, asked him why he wouldn't run for Senate because he won so big for governor, and he said senators don't do anything. Well, first of all, just because you win a gubernatorial race big doesn't mean you're going to win the Senate race big, although I think Ducey probably would win, but also he's weak. Now, would I prefer him as governor to somebody like a Karen Taylor Robeson? Absolutely, because Karen Taylor Robeson is an unknown product and has a worse track record in certain things than Ducey. If she's supposedly the electable choice, why not run Ducey again? He's not term limited anymore. But if I'm told you have to be electable in Arizona, well, then why not just put Ducey back out there? Why are you running this crazy woman with all this baggage? Yeah, I don't think it's going to work out. I hope Andy Biggs is going to be the next governor, but who knows? Who really knows what's going to happen? Who knows? Let's see. Any more super chats here? We have Literally God saying if Sununu runs in 26, we'll flip New Hampshire. He said he wouldn't. He's selfish. Maybe he'll run in 28. Who knows? Red Whale Politics says Dems have a mindset of it's 2016 or 2020 activism. Well, I mean, do they really? Because they're not acting like they were. They're acting more disorganized. They're acting more like they're just giving up. Feels like there's less of them than there really were. I don't know why that is, but it feels like there's a little bit of a vibe shift. Maybe it's like a generational thing. Maybe it's the younger millennials and maybe some of the older Zoomers, not myself, but that kind of fit into that like woke box. And then you have the younger Zoomers that are now occupying the universities that are vastly different in terms of how they vote, in terms of how they're operating compared to how people were, even people that were born 4 years prior. So maybe that's played a role. There's been a lot of things that have played a role in that. A Real Texan Politics for 2 says Elon followed Loomer on 18th kid on the way. Well, I don't know. That's not for me to answer. That's for Elon. That would be for Elon to answer that question. But no, it's a whole mess that's going on there. I don't know. Elon is just like, I don't know if he operates under the mindset that he's like one of these like Alexander the Great type of historical figures, Genghis Khan, whatever, where you have to impregnate as many women as possible. But that kind of seems like what he's done. Who knows how many more times we're going to hear that announcement from some influencer on social media. Oh, I'm pregnant with Elon Musk's baby. Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole strange situation. I'm not going to comment on it any further, but I don't really have anything else to say. That's mainly it. Red Whale Politics has called me a bit too optimistic, but I'm hoping under Vance by the 2030s, the GOP has become nearly fully MAGA or populist. Yeah, I think they're getting there. I don't think it's that optimistic. They just got to keep going down that pathway for sure. And the ship has to be tighter run as a party if you want to win. And you have to know why you're winning. And it seems like now you have new leadership in the party. You've had it for about a year by now that actually understands how to win, understands it, gets it. Maybe not perfectly, but look, you got the White House, Senate, and House back. Nobody thought that was going to happen. I mean, a lot of people thought, but so many people did. So many dumb people, loud people didn't think it was going to happen. But it happened, and honestly, maybe it wouldn't have happened as easily if you had the previous leadership in there. But American Nerd 1776 says, saw a clip of Marco Rubio on Deface the Nation, and the person interviewing tried to claim that the free speech in Germany caused Mustache Man to rise, and Rubio shut her down. These people are delusional. Well, it's strange because you have somebody who is notorious for being in power and silencing dissent. They're doing the same exact thing. Horseshoe theory, in a way, checks out in that department. But the main takeaway is that they're just fear-mongering. You're not allowed to dissent in any way, shape, or form, or they'll throw you in a box and fall back on the crutch that is, the 1940s, which they're stuck in. Every political comparison these people throw out there always has to bring up something to do with World War II, one way or another. Because they don't understand that the whole like post-war consensus, it's all changed. It's not popular. It's not popular to police the world when times have changed, when it's year 2025, not 1945. DB says, why are so many people mad at Rubio for supporting Israel? They're the best country in the Middle East and they must defeat Hamas. Well, a lot of people are upset at certain people because they're looking for a reason to be upset at certain people. And I'm probably going to agree 100% with Rubio's approach to Israel or foreign policy. Probably not. Rubio's come a long way. I think he's a very good Secretary of State. But some people are just looking for a reason to reject victories, and then they just like go down certain, I guess you would say, political pathways that lead them to just creating purity tests that are ridiculous in some way, shape, or form. So that's pretty much it. Rubio's a great Secretary of State. Even if I don't agree with him on everything, his approach so far has been, peace through strength. It's been very effective. It's been very realist. It's been in line with Trump's worldview. And I think that was the fear of a lot of people when Trump picked Rubio, is which Rubio are you going to get? Are you going to get the one we've seen for the past couple of years, or the one we saw so infamously back in 2016? And so far, I'm very impressed with what I've seen, better than I initially expected from Rubio, all things considered. Doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. There's a lot of moving parts to the government, but the more waste you cut and get out of the way, like what we see Elon doing, the more efficient. If he's doing to the government what he did with Twitter, it's going to be more usable. It's going to be more popular. It's going to be better as time goes on. That's what so many people don't understand. But I forgot to change the lower third, and there we go. But we have only like one super chat left, and we'll probably wrap up the stream. We've been going on for about an hour. Red Whale Politics says, do you go to the gym and how is it? Well, of course I go to the gym still, and it's been good. It's been pretty good. It's good to be consistent. So we got our super chat goal. We got 30 teal and above super chat. So thank you guys for helping us hit our goal. And we'll probably be wrapping up the stream. It's been over an hour. It's late. It's past midnight on the East Coast. A lot of people have work in the morning. A lot of people are ready to go to bed. So we're going to wrap it up, and make sure before you guys go, like the stream down below, subscribe, hit the bell. You guys can follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.